Masters of Change.
Welcome to Masters of Change. My name is Kim Cunio and I'm the Head of Music at the Australian National University. And it's my great joy to be having a series of spiritual discussions with Charlie Hogg. Charlie is the Director of the Brahma Kumaris here in Australia. Welcome again, Charlie.
Yes, Kim, great to be with you again.
There's been some very interesting discussions between us, and I think none more interesting than karma, to the point where we've already had a number of episodes, and I don't feel we're even finished yet, because karma is a big topic, and it seems to bring up so much about who we are. So I have a preliminary question. Who are we, Charlie?
Well, the way I see it, Kim, is that I am a soul, and this indivisible consciousness which sits here, and I, the soul, am speaking through this mouth, I, the soul, I'm looking at you. But the amazing thing is, Kim, that in my subconscious, I carry this incredible record of my past. It's like a storehouse of all my past experiences and behaviors are stored there. So I sit in the present, but I carry the whole story of my past, which perhaps you could describe as my karma, my whole story that is manifesting who I am in the present. Who I am, where I live, who I belong to, what I do, is all manifested by my past actions.
So if this is true, Charlie, how do we keep a record of this? Is it that we keep our own record, or is there, like in some religion, an external body that makes a judgment on us and puts us into purgatory or heaven or hell?
Nope, we're not judged by anyone, as far as I see it, not by God, or any sort of tribunal that may sit in judgment of me and my behaviour, except for myself, really. And that's the incredible thing, Kim, is that all my actions, either make me feel good about who I am or not so good about who I am. And I find that if I do an action against my truth, it destroys my relationship with me. And what has happened is that when I became body conscious, I forgot who I was, I did actions against my truth, and it really began to wear down the relationship I have with myself. So, I sit in the present, and often the karmic story of the past is like a big sack of weight on my head, It's weighing me down and really influencing, because karma is like habitual patterns. So I have habitual patterns of responding to people, of emotions, of all sorts of habits. But it's like I'm dancing to the tune of them. I can't change them. And I feel I want to change them, but where do I get the power to change these deep habits of hurt, pain, sorrow, suffering, which are in most of us at the moment?
Charlie, I have a little theory, which is that we always behave a little bit better when someone's watching us. Have you noticed that, it's like we raise our vibration when we're there for others.
Yeah.
But what you're saying with karma is that there is always an observer to every single action, and that is ourselves.
That's so right.
So we are never really alone, because our highest self, the soul, is actually keeping a record of everything that happens.
You are your own best friend or your own worst enemy. And that's one of the most, I think, the most powerful things. If I behave according to my truth, it's like I'm befriending myself. If I behave according to self-deception, I become my own worst enemy. It's almost like there's a part of me that wants to be true, but I'm doing actions that are feeding an old personality. And how can I feel comfortable about who I am? And this is why I think there's an epidemic of lack of self-respect in our world, because I know I can be better, but I observe myself behaving against my truth. And really deep down, I don't like myself. And unfortunately, sometimes I can hate myself.
So really what you're saying is, not only do we have to behave better, we have to be able to forgive ourselves for when we do get it wrong.
Absolutely, Kim. And it's an extraordinary relationship, isn't it, that I have with myself. Like you were saying, I am watching myself and I'm judging myself constantly. Even though we hate it when other people may judge us, but actually we're constantly judging ourselves. And unfortunately today, putting ourselves down is such a deep habit to sort of judge and really feel hopeless about who I am. And I think what we've been talking about is, starting to perform a quality of actions, to behave in a way that actually begins to, really make me feel, I was going to say proud, but at least give me back my self-respect.
Charlie, are there things that we can look for? Because you said so beautifully, some things will make me feel better and some things will make me feel worse. It's almost too simple. It's like, oh, well, obviously, eating a bowl of broccoli is going to make me feel better physically, and obviously eating 10 packets of chips is going to make me feel worse physically. But it's maybe not so easy with actions. So what are the signs we can look for, about maybe is an action or thought making is elevated or non-elevated?
Kim, there's basically two qualities of action we can perform. Sukhkarma, which is like good karma. That is really when I perhaps meditate or even I just become soul-conscious. So all my actions are coming out of my most elevated state. And then there's vikarma, which is negative action, when I'm body-conscious. So the seeds of my actions are from ego and anger and a lot of negative emotion. And so really it's a very clear distinction, and hence why we meditate, because it raises my consciousness and my actions start to flow out of that elevated consciousness.
So to really do this, it sounds like either we can just sort of hope for the best, which is, here I am in a new day, I'm going to do my very best, I might get it right or I might get it wrong, but maybe there's some practices I can do to make that easier. And I wanted to ask you, what are some of the things that you do in your life to enable elevated actions?
What I do, I put a structure into my life, Kim, to sort of, thoughts are the seeds of action. So I feel a really beautiful structure for the day is to, when you wake up, just to, not rush into reflecting on yesterday and what happened, or rush into what I have to do today, because we're doing, we're just human doings rather than human beings. But really sit quietly, connect with God, fill the consciousness with elevated thoughts and feelings, and then step into my day. And then if during the day something happens, rather than my mind going into overdrive, analysing and processing, stop for even a few minutes and revisit my soul-conscious state and try to go back to that place that we know is the spring of elevated action. So it's like I'm monitoring myself constantly throughout the day to maintain that elevated state. Because I find that if you're a bit low and something happens, you can react. You can say that word, you can do an action, and then later when you're in your higher self, you regret it a lot, that because we allowed that lower state. So it's sort of like an insurance policy to keep elevated, because that will influence the quality of my actions.
Charlie, when you spoke, I had an image come very strongly into my mind. It's like all of us attending a garden in our lives. And, the human nature is so often that we want to do all or nothing, isn't it? Like, I'm going to meditate for 12 hours today, and then I might do nothing tomorrow. But yet, when we see how plants go well, it's that they get the same or a very close amount of watering each day, and that there's the right amount of sunlight. So it seems like what you're saying to us is it's that sense of a regular, stable spiritual life that we need to manifest. And then we can start to really intervene in the karmic accounts we're making. Would that be a nice way to describe it?
Kim, I think we're at a time where a lot of people really want to grow spiritually. But, all my priorities are external. And I leave myself last. So I never get into a regular mode of meditation. And I find that when I have a regular practice of meditation and perhaps spiritual study every day, it's like it's that regular sun or water for the plant that will keep you growing. And, it's the story of the hare and the tortoise, It's a spiritual story, and really I've seen it so many times on my journey. Some people, a big issue comes in their life, they become a hare. They do the 12 hours meditation a day for a few weeks, and then they go back to nothing. The tortoises do that little bit every single day for year in, year out. And what I've seen is their whole face transforms. A joy comes in their face and a peace like that. That beautiful energy of contentment where you just see a beautiful fragrance comes on their face. And this is what I recommend when people ever ask me these days. Seeing our world, it's absolute investment in your future to be regular in your practice. And that means sometimes you may sit to meditate and not much happens. And then some people think, oh, I'm not sure this is working. It'll go through different phases, but once you get into a regular mode, you will educate yourself how to experience, how to enjoy it, and you'll really see yourself getting stronger and stronger.
I think this is very inspiring, Charlie, because it says to us that we don't have to be perfect all the time, but it's about making constant effort.
Yeah.
So if we're to say that we want to, at the end of our lives, not have this, we will all see some version of our lives at the end. If we want to see a good life, we have to make these constant small investments to make that life good. And we need to, I think, find a way to short circuit the bits that don't work.
Yeah.
And it seems like if we're going to remember hatred or violence or anger or remember God, the choice is quite simple.
It's so true, Kim. And when you were saying that, I was thinking that sometimes for a career, if I have my own business, I will be regular every day, year in, year out, to open the shop and be there present because it's my income. If I think of this as my spiritual income, and this is more permanent, the shop will be for a temporary income for this life, but it's a permanent way of really investing in my future.
Well, I think this is very inspiring. So all that I wanted to say to us is, I would like us to take 1 minute time out. Could you just really bring the soul consciousness into our conversation just for 1 minute and then we'll resume.
Let me consider myself to be the eternal point, sitting lightly in the forehead. I am a peaceful soul. I am a loving soul. I am a powerful soul. When I step back in to the self-respect of who I am, these thoughts are the seeds of elevated actions, elevated karma that will create an elevated life.
Charlie, that's so simple. But it's a lifetime of work, isn't it? So
It
this is, I think, you've really given us the essence of what the spiritual path is. It's constant self-awareness and constant work, but the work is not a chore.
No.
No, it's being one with ourselves.
Yeah. And Kim, before the word effort came up, and sometimes effort, I think a lot of people effort, I feel a bit worn out already, and then I have to make effort. I think it's mainly just, I like the word attention. It's almost like I have a gentle attention to what's happening inside. And if I see my thoughts wandering off in a direction, I know it's going to make me unhappy, or I know it's going to take me into a dark place, I quickly tweak it and I bring it back to who I am and who I belong to. And I think that I love this attention. If I just have this habit of sweetly, lovefully checking myself, in a way that's what effort really is. It's sort of making sure I'm staying in the right zone. And if something happens, I bounce back quickly. I learn to bounce back quickly. If I lose my stage, if an emotion takes over, if a fear takes over, or if a worry takes over, I can quickly revert back.
Charlie, this is very, very good. So I now have a question that I think is a little bit harder, but not that much. I don't think for you any of the questions are that hard. But this one is about, I've had a lot of people ask it to me, if I meditate, can I clear my karma? And this, sometimes we're almost a little bit desperate, I know I've done things wrong in my life, so if I meditate quickly, maybe I'll stop everything going wrong in my life.
Yes, it can actually, Kim, in the sense that, all the story is in my subconscious. And what happens is that it has an influence on me. But when my intellect has truth, there's sort of the story or my karmic story in my subconscious has less influence over me. And so in a sense, I'm clearing its power over me, if you understand what I mean. So an emotion or a memory that used to really upset me, disturb me, I couldn't sleep, slowly has less power over me. So in a sense, I'm clearing the account of the past. I'm clearing the influence of the past. And I think the most incredible feeling is that sense of freedom, that sense of lightness that you have when you've absolved a story that used to influence you a lot.
Charlie, this is very profound because it also says that if we've done something that's harmed another soul, it doesn't mean we're absolved from it, does it?
Yeah.
It means even more so, we should make things right.
Yeah.
But yet you're saying is not only should we fix up the mess we've created, but we should look at why the mess has been created in the mind.
Yeah.
And this can be done over time.
Yes, it really can. I mean, when you were saying that, Kim, sometimes I just think that, I've been a practitioner with the Brahma Kumaris for 45 years. You've been on the journey for as long, and how much is there to learn? It's like I would say there's even more to learn. Would you feel that? That you just, it's like there's so much to learn about the self, isn't it? Because spirituality is not so much seeing what you should be like and what you should be doing. It's gently observing myself, learning not to beat up on myself, learning not to overreact to myself. To me, that's a real sign of wisdom, to see my impurity and not feel hopeless or bad about it. That's an important part of the journey. And learning not to react to it. And then with meditation and wisdom, it stops influencing me. So it's like I'm clearing my story. I'm sort of stepping back into who I really want to be as a person.
Charlie, this is a very nice story. I would like to just imagine for a second that we've come into these bodies and we're chemists for the day. And so, we come in and we're professors of chemistry. And we've been given unlimited license to experiment on this body. And really, this is what we have been given. It's an incredible thing that we are given absolute freedom every day in every way to create our own destiny. But yet the only deal is that when we come into it, we have to forget that initially.
Yeah.
And so seems like there's a very interesting dance there, because what the spiritual life is, it's remembering what we should already know, and then being forgiving of ourselves for not applying it as we're relearning.
Yeah, it's almost like the blinkers are taken off, isn't it? And you start to see reality. And I think a huge transformation for me was just the deep realization of always existing, of being eternal. And that when I keep attaching my heart to things temporary, how distorted my whole perception of the purpose of life is, It's just, I build in so much sorrow and pain into my life. But when the blinkers are removed, you can actually see clearly and what I need to do, what's important and what's not so important. Often we spend a lot of our life investing in things which really aren't very meaningful or important at all.
So Charlie, the follow-on question is, just say we are meditating a bit and we're having some practice, but I'm still creating karmic accounts, and we all will. If it's not released through meditation, how else generally is karma released?
I would say wisdom by thinking before I act. So when I keep wisdom in my mind, before I just jump into an opinion or a behavior or an action, I sort of almost look at the consequences. Because sometimes, there's a rush of blood to just say or do without really thinking through the consequences. And I think wisdom is really to reflect on the consequences of certain outlooks, certain behaviors, certain attitudes. And that makes you correct yourself in the present rather than performing the action and later regretting the result of the action.
Charlie, I want to thank you for that answer because I think it really does clarify things. It's like a higher order function, and this is the great thing of being human, isn't it?
It is.
We have this ability to predict, to some extent, the future.
Yeah.
Like, if I do something that hurts someone else, I will probably get hurt.
Yeah, that's...
And and then we can really take it from there. So I want to ask you, it's that time of our sessions where instead of just talking and thinking, we do and be. So I'd like to ask you to take us into that being stage.
I am sitting here in the present. And yet the wonder is I carry a whole record of my past in my subconscious. My original past is pure, peaceful, joyful, and totally benevolent. But my more recent past is patterns and habits that have been created through forgetting who I am. And sometimes in my heart, I want to be such a kind, loving human being. But these patterns override that behavior. And sometimes I even observe myself hurting the people I love, being rude to the people I respect, opposing those who are trying to support me. And I begin to see that I'm like a victim of my past. And with this awareness, I realize that the ultimate aim of my spiritual journey is to free myself from these habits that I have collected along the way. The more I take power from God, with love in my heart, I have a natural focus to my relationship with God. When my old habits pull me, I have a resilience not to go there. And then they start to have less and less influence over me. And in turn, it's almost like the accounts of the past. The past story is leaving. And I begin to create my new story. My new story of soul consciousness. And my new story of being a loving, peaceful, and powerful being. In this story of change, never be afraid of the power of my own habits. and tendencies. They can come with so much force that I can bow down in front of them and feel hopeless or even give up. But because of this sweet relationship with the divine, I have the courage to face and continue. Along the spiritual journey, I will have to face many storms, but in time, the storms recede, and I step back into my own beauty. Om Shanti.
Dear friends, we've slowed down again with Charlie. We've had the chance to really think about what it is to be on this earth. Do we want to be the reactive person, processing and going into our minds and saying this should be this way or that way? Or do we have the courage to look for our true nature and deepen our relationship with God? Charlie has said all of us have the same power and capacity and flexibility to remake this relationship with God. Isn't that exciting? That all of us can, through meditation and through a simple spiritual life, clear the karmic accounts we have created little by little. For that message, Charlie, and for so many others, thank you for the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Kim. Wonderful. Thank you.